My father says the word merger like it costs him nothing, and I want to throw my glass at his head. It's not a merger, I say. It's a wedding. You're talking about my wedding like it's a quarterly report. It's both, he says, and doesn't even look up from the contract, which is somehow worse than if he'd looked up and lied to my face. Julien Castellane has never once in his life apologized for anything, and he's not about to start over something as small as ruining my life. That's the thought I have, sitting there, and it arrives so calmly that it almost scares me more than if I'd screamed it. 60 days, he tells me. 60 days until the Mercier merger has to be signed, sealed, and consummated. His word, not mine. And I genuinely don't know if he means it literally or just doesn't care how it sounds. 60 days until Castellane Vintners either survives or doesn't, because apparently my father bet our warehouse, the actual building, the actual grapes, the actual roof, over 4 generations of this family's stubborn pride, on a deal he made without asking me a single thing. And who, I say, very slowly. Because I already know, because some part of me has known, since the word Mercier left his mouth. Exactly. Am I marrying? He finally looks up. There's something almost like pity in his face, which is the most frightening expression I've ever seen him make. Adrien Mercier, he says. The room tilts, just slightly, like a boat finding a wave it didn't expect. What? I haven't said that name out loud in 4 years. I haven't let myself think it in daylight, only in the specific unguarded hour around 2 a.m., when my defenses go soft and stupid, and I let myself remember the exact weight of his hand on the back of my neck, in a dorm room that smelled like rain through an open window, the way he used to laugh. Not the careful laugh he gave everyone else, like it surprised him every time he left without a word, no explanation, no goodbye. That meant anything, just a transfer to another city and a silence that swallowed 4 years whole. And now my father wants to hand me to him in front of 300 guests? And call it strategy. No, I say, the warehouse. Julien, I don't care about the warehouse. You will, he says, when it's gone. And he says it so simply, so certainly, that I understand for the first time that this isn't a negotiation. It never was one. I am 27 years old, and I am being told who I will marry. And the only thing in the room that feels remotely like mine is the slow, sick lurch of my own heart at the sound of a name I thought I'd buried. But Margot finds me on the terrace an hour later, 2 glasses of something dark red already poured, because my sister has never once in her life waited to be asked. You look like you've seen a ghost, she says, handing me a glass. Worse. I've seen a contract. She sits, tucking her legs up under her the way she used to when we were kids, hiding from our father's temper in the cellar. And for a second the years fall away, and we're just 2 people who grew up scared of the same man. Adrien Mercier, she says, testing the name like she's tasting it. I remember him, the one you wouldn't talk about for an entire summer, and then suddenly never mentioned again. I don't want to talk about him now either. You're going to marry him in 60 days, Julien. I think the talking about him phase of your life has officially begun. I don't answer. I look out at the vineyard. Instead, rows and rows of vines our family has tended for 4 generations, green going gold in the early evening light. And I think about how strange it is that something so beautiful can be used as collateral for something so cold. Does he know, I ask, that it's me? I assume his mother told him the same way. Papa told you, sat him down, slid a contract across a table, called it an honor. She takes a sip, watching me carefully. Did you love him? Really? The question lands somewhere underneath my ribs and just sits there, heavy. I was 23, I say, which isn't an answer. And we both know it. That's not what I asked. I know what you asked. She doesn't push. That's the thing about Margot. She knows exactly how far to go. And then she stops, lets the silence do the rest of the work, lets me sit in my own answer. until I'm ready to say it out loud or not say it at all. Tonight, I don't say it. But I don't deny it either. And some small traitorous part of me notices that I don't deny it. After she goes inside, I stay out on the terrace a long time, alone, doing nothing in particular, turning the empty glass in my hand, listening to the cicadas start up somewhere down past the vines, watching the last of the light drain out of the sky into that deep, unrepeatable blue that comes right before full dark. I don't think about the contract. I don't think about the warehouse. I think about a dorm room 4 years ago. The specific smell of rain coming through a cracked window. The sound of someone laughing, like it surprised them every time. I let myself have it just for these few minutes, before I have to go back inside and be the version of myself that negotiates and refuses and plans. Out here, in the quiet, I'm allowed to just miss him. The first time I see him again is at the engagement dinner, which is somehow worse than I imagined, because I imagined it would feel like seeing a stranger, and instead it feels exactly like 4 years collapsing into nothing. He's standing by the window when I walk in, and he hasn't changed the way people change when you build them up too much in your memory. If anything, he's more himself now. Sharper around the jaw, the same restless energy in his hands that he used to have when he was nervous, which he is clearly trying not to show. Julien, he says, and his voice does something to the room, some old gravity I'd convinced myself I'd outgrown. Adrien. We stand there. 2 grown men, in a room full of cousins and lawyers, and our parents pretending this is a celebration. And neither of us says any of the things either of us actually wants to say. You look well, he says, which is the kind of thing you say to someone you don't know. And it stings more than an insult would have. You left, I say instead, because 4 years of silence apparently buys you exactly 0 patience for small talk. Something crosses his face, fast, gone before I can read it fully, but I catch the edge of it. Guilt, maybe? Or grief. I don't get the chance to decide which, because his mother appears at his elbow with the particular brightness of someone determined to perform happiness in public. Aren't they handsome together? Cécile Mercier says to no one, to everyone, her hand resting on her son's arm like a closed door. Adrien's jaw tightens. I watch it tighten. I used to know that exact tension. Used to be the one who could undo it with a hand on the back of his neck. And the memory of that, the specific physical memory of my own hand doing that, arrives so suddenly that I have to look away from him entirely. We should sit, he says quietly to me. Only me. And, for 1/2 of 1 second, it sounds like an apology for something much larger than dinner seating. Dinner is a performance, and everyone in the room knows it, which somehow makes it worse, not better. Because we're all sitting here pretending the performance is real, raising glasses to a future none of us chose. Theo Lavoie sits across from me, Adrien's lawyer, and apparently also his shadow, and he watches me the entire meal with an expression I can only describe as a man doing long division on whether I'm a threat. You're staring, I say finally, when the dessert plates are cleared and our fathers have moved to the far end of the table to argue quietly about distribution rights, like it's the only language either of them speaks fluently. I'm assessing, Theo says. Assessing what? Whether you're going to do to him again what you did the first time. The words land like a slap, mostly because I have absolutely no idea what he means, and he says it with such total certainty that for a moment, I doubt my own memory of the last 4 years. What I did the first time, I repeat. He doesn't talk about it, which tells you everything, if you actually paid attention back then. Theo's voice. Is he even careful, the voice of someone choosing every word like it might be used against him later. He came back from that summer different, smaller for a while. And then he got very good at not being smaller anymore, which isn't the same as healing. I don't know what you think happened, I say, but I didn't do anything to him. He left. He didn't say why. He didn't say goodbye. I'm the one who asked him, Theo says, cutting me off, and there's something almost like pleading underneath the warning. If you're going to marry him, actually ask him. Don't assume you already know the story just because you're the one who got left. He stands, buttons his jacket, and walks toward Adrien's end of the table without another word, leaving me sitting there with my wine going warm in my hand and the uncomfortable, expanding suspicion that I have spent 4 years, certain of a story that might not be true. I find him on the balcony afterward, because some habits looking for him in a crowded room, finding the exact place he's standing without meaning to, apparently never actually go away, they just go quiet for a while. Theo talks too much, he says, without turning around, like he already knew it would be me. He told me to ask you something. I don't think he meant to, but he did. Adrien turns then. The city is behind him, all soft, gold light and distant noise. And for a moment he just looks at me the way he used to, like he's deciding something, weighing it the same careful stillness before he used to say something true. Ask me then. Why did you leave? He doesn't answer. Right away. He looks down at his hands instead, turns the stem of his wine glass slowly between 2 fingers, and I give him the silence, because some instinct in me, old and familiar, knows not to fill it. Your father came to see me, he says finally. Before I left, he told me that if I didn't end things with you and disappear quietly, he'd make sure my mother's company never got another distribution contract in this country again. Not threatened it, promised it, like it was already decided. His voice doesn't shake, but it goes very flat, the way voices go when someone has rehearsed staying calm about something for a very long time. I was 23, and it was my mother's entire life's work. And I believed him because he's the kind of man you believe. The balcony goes very quiet. Somewhere below us, a car alarm goes off and stops. You could have told me, I say, and my voice comes out smaller than I want it to. And then what? You'd have fought him. You'd have lost. I'd have ruined my family and yours both for nothing, because he was always going to win that fight. He looks at me directly now, and there's nothing performed in it at all. So I left instead. I made it look like I just stopped caring. It was easier for you to hate me than to watch you lose everything, trying to protect something he'd already decided to destroy. I don't know what to say. I open my mouth and I genuinely don't know what's about to come out of it, whether it's going to be anger or grief or the 4 years of silence finally cracking open into something neither of us can take back. What comes out, in the end, is just, that's the stupidest, most selfless thing I've ever heard. And Adrien, for the first time all night, actually laughs. Real. Surprised, the exact laugh I used to know, like it caught him off guard that he still had it in him. We don't fix 4 years in one night on a balcony. That's not how any of this works, and I'm grateful in a strange way that neither of us pretends it does. But something shifts. Small. Quiet. The kind of shift you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, except I am looking for it now. Every single day, in the way he says my name at the next planning meeting, in the half second longer. He holds eye contact than he needs to. You're staring again, Margot says, nudging me under the table during a meeting about seating charts that has somehow taken 90 minutes and produced nothing. I'm not staring. You've been staring at his hands for 10 minutes. He's just signing a catering form. I have, in fact, been staring at his hands. They're the same hands. Everything else about him has sharpened with age, but his hands are exactly the same. And there's something devastating about that, about the parts of a person that stay constant while everything else rearranges itself around them. After the meeting, he catches me in the hallway, alone. The first time we've been alone since the balcony. I have something for you, he says. And there's a nervousness in it that doesn't match the easy confidence. He's worn like armor all week. He hands me a folded piece of paper. I open it, and it's a ticket stub, faded, soft at the creases, from a film we saw together 4 years ago, the kind of small, forgettable thing nobody keeps unless it means something. You kept this, I say. I kept a lot of things, he says, and doesn't elaborate, and doesn't need to. I want to say something back. I want to tell him I still have the scarf he left in my dorm room that I told myself I forgot to return. I don't say it. Not yet. But I fold the ticket stub carefully and put it in my pocket like it's something fragile, because it is. This doesn't fix the warehouse, I say, instead because some part of me is still terrified of hoping for too much too fast. Or the 60 days, or the fact that our parents are using us to settle a 20-year grudge. No, he agrees. It doesn't fix any of that. But it's a start, he says, and the way he looks at me when he says it makes the hallway feel very small and very warm. I don't move for a second. I just stand there holding a faded piece of paper that shouldn't mean anything, a film I don't even remember the plot of anymore. A Tuesday night, 4 years gone, and, somehow, it means more than the contract sitting in my father's safe, more than the warehouse, more than any of the language either of our families has used to describe this. It's the specific kind of object that only matters to the two people who were there, which is exactly what Tio told me to look for, and exactly what I didn't think I'd find this fast. I think about all the versions of this hallway conversation I rehearsed in my head over 4 years. Angry ones, cold ones, ones where I walked past him without a word just to prove I could, and none of them looked anything like this. None of them had a ticket stub in my pocket and his hand close enough to mine that I can feel the warmth coming off his skin, without either of us quite reaching the rest of the way. I should go, he says eventually. Not because he wants to, I can tell, but because if neither of us moves first, we're going to stand in this hallway until someone comes looking for us. Okay, I say. Neither of us goes anywhere for another full minute. Cécile Mercier corners me by the wine cellar 2 days later, and I understand immediately that this conversation is not a coincidence. You should know something about my husband, she says without preamble, watching me with eyes that are Adrien's. Eyes, exactly. Down to the way they assess before they soften. He died believing this feud would end with him. 20 years of it, and at the end he made me promise I'd find a way to close it before I joined him. I'm sorry, I say, and I mean it, even though I have no idea what to do with this information yet. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. Her voice is steady, almost cold. The voice of a woman who has spent 2 decades turning grief into strategy, because the alternative was unbearable. I'm telling you because my son has spent 4 years building a life that doesn't include happiness, just function. And I would very much like to know whether you're going to give him something real, or whether you're going to be one more transaction he survives. I don't know yet, I say, because lying to this woman feels like it would be its own kind of crime. But I want to find out. She studies me for a long moment. Something in her face loosens just slightly. Not approval, exactly, but the absence of suspicion, which from her might be close enough. He used to talk about you, she says, turning to go. Years ago, before he stopped. I always wondered why he stopped so suddenly. She pauses at the door. Now I think I understand why. Don't waste whatever this is, Julien. I've buried enough things in the name of this family's pride. She leaves me standing in the cellar, with my heart going too fast, and the distinct, dizzying sense that the ground under this entire arrangement is shifting in ways neither of our fathers, alive or dead, ever intended. The false calm arrives in week 4, and it feels for 3 full days like everything might actually be fine. We fall into something that looks almost like dating. Long walks through the vineyard at dusk, the air going cool and faintly sweet with crushed grape skins from the harvest. An unplanned dinner that turns into 4 hours of talking about nothing important and everything that matters. His hand, finding mine on the walk back to the house like it was never anything but natural. There's a particular quality to the light at that hour just before the sky goes that deep, unrepeatable blue, and I notice myself noticing it the way you do when you're finally present enough in your own life to see the ordinary things again. Teo even softens toward me, slightly, after he watches Adrien laugh. Really laugh. At something I say over dinner. his shoulders dropping in a way I don't think he means for anyone to see. I owe you an apology, Theo tells me, finding me alone by the cellar steps, the stone cool under my hand where I'm leaning against it. I thought you were going to break him again. I'm not going to. I believe you, he says, and there's something in his voice, some old ache he's careful not to show fully, something that flickers and is gone before I can name it, that makes me wonder for the first time whether Theo's protectiveness has always been about more than friendship. I don't ask. It's not mine to ask. Not yet, maybe not ever, and I let the question pass between us unspoken and watch him decide not to answer it either. That night, Adrien and I sit on the same balcony where everything cracked open, the city lights doing their slow gold flicker below us. And for the first time in 4 years, I let myself believe this might actually work. Not the merger, not the contract, but the actual fragile, real thing growing underneath it. Quiet and stubborn as anything that survives 4 years of being told it shouldn't. I think, I say, we might be okay. I think so too, he says, and laces his fingers through mine. And for 3 days, that's exactly what it feels like. Easy, unremarkable, the kind of happiness that doesn't announce itself, just sits there warm and steady like it's always belonged. Then on the 4th day, my father calls a meeting, and everything I thought was settling starts, instead, to come apart. The merger terms have changed, my father says, sliding a new document across the table. Like it's nothing, like it isn't a grenade with the pin already pulled. Changed how, I say? Cecile wants a clause added. If either of you backs out before the marriage is finalized, the Mercier family retains full distribution rights, and Castellane Vintners forfeits the warehouse immediately. No grace period. I look at Adrien. His face has gone very still, very careful. The exact expression I remember from 4 years ago. Right before he disappeared, Mother, he says low. What is this? Insurance, Cecile says, not unkindly but firmly. I told Julien I wanted you to have something real. I meant it. But I also buried your father with this feud unfinished, and I will not lose the company finishing what should have ended years ago. This isn't about doubting either of you. It's about making certain neither of you can simply walk away from this the way people in our world tend to walk away from things that become difficult. The room goes cold in a way that has nothing to do with temperature. You're punishing us, I say, for choosing to actually try. I'm protecting 2 families, she says. If what's between you is real, this changes nothing. If it isn't, better to know now. Adrien stands so fast, his chair nearly tips. This is exactly what you promised you wouldn't do, he says to her, and his voice cracks slightly on the word promised. And I realize, watching him, that this isn't about the clause at all. It's about every promise his family has made and broken in the name of the feud, stacking up, finally, into something he can't carry anymore. He leaves the room without looking at me. And for the first time in weeks, I don't know if he's going to come back. I find him an hour later in the one place I should have thought to look first, the old wine cellar beneath the Mercier estate, sitting on an overturned crate among barrels that have aged longer than either of us has been alive. I'm not running, he says, before I can say anything. I want you to know that I'm not doing what I did 4 years ago. I didn't think you were. I thought about it, he admits, and his honesty costs him something. I can see it cost him something. For about 10 minutes in that hallway, I thought about just disappearing again. Because it's easier. It's always easier. But I'm 28, not 23, and I'm done letting other people's fear decide what I do with my own life. I sit down across from him, close enough that our knees almost touch. Your mother's wrong about one thing, I say. She thinks the clause protects something real, but it doesn't. Real doesn't need a penalty clause to survive. Real survives because we choose it every day, on purpose, even when it's hard. That's very poetic for a man who screamed at his father a month ago. I contain multitudes, I say, and he laughs. That real laugh again, the one that still catches him by surprise. And something in his shoulders finally drops. I'm scared, he says quieter now, no performance left in it at all. Not of the claws of this. Of actually letting myself want this again after I spent 4 years convincing myself I didn't. I know, I say. I'm scared too. What do? We stop letting them write the terms, I say. We write our own. What we do, it turns out, is go to both our families together, the next morning, and refuse the clause entirely. If you want this merger, I tell my father and Cecile, both standing in the same room that held the grenade 2 days earlier. It happens on our terms, not as insurance against us failing. No penalty clause. No forfeiture, triggered by anything except an actual decision to end the marriage made by us. Together, if it ever comes to that. You built this feud. We are not building our marriage as collateral for your guilt. My father's jaw tightens in a way I recognize, the exact expression he wore when I refused him, at the very beginning of all this. Except this time there's something underneath it that might possibly be respect. And if I refuse, he says, then the warehouse is on you, I say. Not me. I won't marry someone at gunpoint to save a building. I'll find another way to save it, but I won't do it like this. Beside me, Adrien doesn't say anything for a moment, and then he reaches over. In front of both our parents, in front of everything this feud has cost both our families, and takes my hand. What he said, Adrien says simply, all of it. Cecile looks at her son for a long moment, and something in her face, grief maybe, or finally the release of grief, settles.
Fine,
she says. No clause. She looks at Henry. We finish this the way it should have started, with them choosing it. Or not at all. My father doesn't say yes immediately, but he doesn't say no either, which from him might be the closest thing to surrender I've ever witnessed. The warehouse, in the end, is saved by something neither family expected. Margot, who has spent the entire 60 days quietly restructuring our distribution contracts with 3 smaller vineyards, walks into the next family meeting with an alternative deal that doesn't require the Merciers merger at all. You could have led with this a week ago, I tell her afterward, half laughing, half stunned. And miss watching you finally grow a spine. Absolutely not. She squeezes my shoulder. Besides, this way, whatever happens with Adrien happens because you actually want it, not because the warehouse needed it to happen. It's a strange kind of gift, realizing the thing forcing your hand has quietly removed itself. And what's left standing is only the thing you actually chose. I tell Adrien that night, on the same balcony, under the same Gold City light. The warehouse is safe, I say, without the marriage. Margot fixed it. He goes very still. So, we don't have to do this anymore. No, I say, we don't. Do you want to anyway? He asks, and his voice has none of its usual careful control in it, just the plain, unguarded question underneath everything we've spent 4 years avoiding. Yes, I say, without even a second of hesitation, surprising myself with how easy the word comes. Not because of a contract, not because of a feud, because I have spent 4 years pretending I stopped loving you. And it was the worst lie I've ever told, including the ones I told myself. Tio finds me alone the next day by the same cellar steps where he apologized weeks ago, and this time, he's the one who looks nervous. I need to tell you something, he says, and I need you to actually hear it, not just be polite about it. Okay. I've loved him for 6 years, Theo says, plainly, like ripping off something that's been stuck too long to wait for a gentler moment, since before you. I never said anything because he was already gone on you and then he left. And I told myself it didn't matter, because he'd never come back to anyone, including me. He exhales. I'm not telling you this to ruin anything. Ched. I'm telling you because I spent a month being suspicious of you for the wrong reasons, and you deserve to know the real one. I don't know what to say at first. There's no easy answer to give a man who has just handed you something. Dishonest? Does he know? I ask finally. No. And he's not going to. Not for me. Not now. This isn't about getting in the way. Theo's voice steadies. It's about making peace with watching someone be happy with somebody else. I'd rather do that honestly than keep being the suspicious friend in the corner. Theo, don't, he says gently. Don't make this a moment. Just be good to him. That's the only thing I actually want from you. I nod, and he nods back. And something passes between us that isn't quite friendship yet, but might become it, eventually, once the rawness of his honesty settles into something we can both carry more easily. The wedding happens on a clear afternoon in early autumn. In the vineyard, between the rows our family has tended for 4 generations, gold light falling exactly the way it did the evening my father first told me about the merger, except now it means something entirely different. Margot stands beside me. Theo stands beside Adrien, having asked for the role himself, with a steadiness that tells me he meant every word of what he told me weeks ago. Cecile sits in the front row, dabbing her eyes, finally, visibly allowing herself the grief and the joy at once. My father sits beside her, quiet, watching, and when our eyes meet across the aisle, he gives me a single nod. Not an apology, he'll never give one of those, but something adjacent to it, something that might be the closest he's capable of. Adrien walks toward me holding something small in his hand, and when he reaches me, he opens his palm to show me the ticket stub, the one he gave me weeks ago, the one I gave back to him last night, folded into a small velvet pouch, because some things deserve to be carried by both of us, not just one. I kept a lot of things, he says again, echoing the hallway. Except now his voice doesn't carry the old grief in it. Just the plain fact of having survived it. So did I say. I just took longer to admit it. The reception spills into the evening, into music and too much wine, and Margot dancing badly on purpose to make Theo laugh. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Adrien pulls me away from the noise, out past the last row of vines, to the exact spot where, 4 years ago, before any of this, before the feud reignited and the contracts and the threats, we used to sit and talk about nothing, about everything, about a future neither of us thought we'd actually get to have. Do you remember this spot? He asks. Of course I remember it. I used to think about it, he says, more than I let myself admit. Even when I told myself I'd moved on. Even when I was 4 years and an entire country away, pretending none of it mattered. He takes my hand, turns it over, traces the new ring on my finger with his thumb, like he still can't quite believe it's there. I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually hear it the way it's meant. Okay. 4 years ago, I left without saying the one thing I actually wanted to say. I've spent every year since regretting that I let your father's threat be louder than my own voice. He looks at me, steady, unguarded, nothing performed in it at all. So I'm saying it now, where it should have been said the first time. I love you. Not the merger, not the feud ending. You? I loved you then, and I never once stopped, not for a single day of the 4 years I spent pretending otherwise. The vineyard is quiet around us, the kind of quiet Margot taught me to actually notice, the kind that has weight if you let it. I love you too, I say. I think I never stopped either. I just didn't have the proof that you felt the same, and now I do. He laughs softly, presses his forehead to mine, and for a moment neither of us says anything at all, because some things don't need narration, they just need to be felt, fully, in the body, in the quiet, in the exact spot where this all could have started years earlier if the world had let it. Welcome home, he says finally. And it isn't a fade out, it's an arrival. The word he never let himself use 4 years ago when he was too afraid to come back. I never really left, I say. I just didn't know it was still here, waiting. And under the same sky that watched him disappear once, we walk back toward the lights and the music and the family we built out of a feud neither of us asked to inherit together. Finally on our own terms, exactly the way we said we would.